Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. This is season 13, episode 9. I'm really happy to be having you with us today. I have a really stellar interview with two wonderful people who I just totally had a great time interviewing, and you're going to hear this in the interview, I think. So I got to talk with the wonderful and incomparable Lisa Lucas and Debrianna Mansini, two well-known entertainment industry professionals who co-host Corona Kitchen that you may have seen on YouTube. It's a weekly Facebook Live and YouTube cooking show. Lisa is a professional writer, producer, and actor with over 37 TV credits to her name. You've most likely seen her on a TV show at some point, including The Bachelor on ABC and Work of Art on Bravo. She is also a two-time Emmy winner for her work on My First Time on NBC and the documentary feature However Wide the Sky on PBS, which we're going to be talking about a little bit. Debrianna is an actress you've seen. She's a writer and activist known for her role as Fran on AMC's Breaking Bad and also Better Call Saul. So you've most likely seen her and loved her. Um, she's also known for her performance opposite Oscar winner Jeff Bridges in Crazy Heart, which is a wonderful film. Their debut cookbook, That Time We Ate Our Feelings, is just a wonderful cookbook full of gorgeous anecdotes and photographs and just great, fun recipes with inventive names to them. It's a really fun cookbook. I think I want to say it's more than a cookbook. It's like a scrapbook of their lives, talking about their lives, and it's just really fun. It's full of a lot of their own lives and their histories, and it's just really great. I know you're going to love it. It's out now as of this airing, and we had recorded this a little bit earlier in the year, but as of this recording, as you hear it now, the cookbook is out now, and you can get it through major distributors. There's going to be links in the bio as well, so you want to check that out. So I'm going to be taking you to my conversation with Lisa and Debrianna. They live in New Mexico, in Santa Fe, to be exact. So that's where I was talking to them from, and you're going to really love this conversation as much as I loved making it. It was just a real honor. It was a real treat, and I'll take you to that now. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and today I'm very excited to be talking to two people that I'm very excited to see because I've loved their YouTube, Facebook cooking show, and also I've seen them on television as well in many different guises. So today we're talking with Lisa Lucas and Debrianna Mansini, two well-known entertainment industry professionals, co-host Corona Kitchen, a weekly Facebook Live and YouTube cooking show. Their new book, That Time We Ate Our Feelings, 150 Recipes for Comfort Food from the Heart, is out now as of this episode. Lisa and Debrianna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I usually kind of give some intros for the guests, but because you both have very unique and varied backgrounds, can you both introduce yourselves?
Sure. Go ahead, Lisa.
Sure. Okay. Well, it's kind of a melange of stuff. So we've all had 9 lives here in this group. I have been a writer producer in television for about 25 years. Created about 37 TV shows, and came from that world. I have 2 Emmys. I also make documentary features, and I'm working on an independent scripted feature right now, which is really exciting. I also love to cook, and Debrianna, my sister at arms, is someone I love and respect, and we wanted to try to cope during the pandemic and the lockdown, and I credit her for reviving my love of cooking to do this project, just because of my work. I was working so hard, the grind of working in television and our industry, and we were able to take pause, and so it kind of pivoted us into a sort of way that I could have never expected. But it's a different form of entertainment. We did this our show on live stream, but I guess I'm going off and off now. But yeah, I mean, we're storytellers. That's what we do. we're writers and storytellers, and we somehow translated this into this project.
Sounds
I'll
good.
let you have it, Debrianna.
Yeah. Let's see. I come from an acting background, and have written a few things over the years, and produced. I wrote and produced, co-wrote and produced a web series called Ciphers when web series first came out. And then my husband and I did many documentary like shorts when Al Gore had his little channel, and we've actually won a couple of contests doing short video documentary videos on mostly environmental issues. And I have a one-woman show that I wrote called Meatball Chronicles, and performed that I was performing in across the country, and we're about to go to London when the lockdown happened. And I know it was just like everything ground to a halt. And I mean, literally, we were planning the trip, and then we were going back and forth going, should we go? Should we not go? Should we? And I also had it booked at the New Orleans Food Festival, and I was working with the chef there. We were going to put on the show, and he was preparing a whole meal that was built around the performance. And it was just, everything went, nobody knew what was happening. It was such a scary time. So, Lisa and I, two women not to be stopped by external circumstances, decided that we would just we were home and everybody was home and nobody knew what to do. We were when you think about the time, we were so lost. So Lisa and I, the first thing I always turn to is my kitchen. And so I knew that about Lisa. We had known each other for, a bunch of years, but barely had time to get coffee. But we definitely knew about each other's love of food. So I just called her up and said, hey, you want to just cook on Facebook and see if anybody joins us? And, we were originally going to just cook every other day. We're like, oh, I'll cook Tuesday, you cook Thursday, and we'll see what happens. And I don't know what happened, but the next thing we knew, we had cooked for 143 days, every day straight, live on Facebook and YouTube, because we realized that people needed that. Those days were like, oh my God, I found flour. Can you believe it? Let's make bread. Or, we had no idea what we could do.
We were all collectively living in that panic and fear, and we didn't have the vaccine yet, and all that stuff. And it seems like history now, but it was so scary. And, people talk about serendipity, like, yeah. And you're like, sure, serendipity. Yeah. But I mean, we literally fell into this, out of,
we had no plan, zero plan.
Our need to cope was our friendship and bonding with our friends and family. We didn't think anybody else was going to be interested in this. And then the next thing we knew, we had this carrot cake that went viral. And we had thousands of followers overnight. And then we were going to, okay, let's do a few recipes for our members, and we'll just, go down to Kinko's and, laminate a couple things for $15,
like the church cookbook. That's what we had, the old fashioned spiral bound book. That's what we had in mind.
And then the next thing we knew, one thing led to another. A friend of a friend who was like, hey, my publisher's looking for a quirky cookbook, and I thought of you guys. And we pitched our idea and we got a book deal. And we were just like, what? And so
here we are. And now we're doing your fabulous podcast. Who would have thought?
We just
am very glad.
Good food. We just like to eat good food and share it. And there's a lot of family in this. There's a lot of our roots in this book. And I think that we're finding that's what a lot of people respond to too, is just the story. We told them, we're not just going to give you recipes. We want to write the stories connected to these things, because that's, because we're writers, and so we really like how it turned out.
Yeah, we're excited.
I think everybody else is going to like how it turned out too. I'm lucky enough to be able to see proofs of it, and it's pretty amazing. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
I want to ask you both, and I like to ask this question for all my guests because I think it kind of gives us an idea of, your food background. But can you tell us, each of you, where you're from and talk about your food memories of your youth?
Debrianna did a whole play on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to go first?
Sure. Let's see. My food memories for me go back to it's like one of my very first memories was making pasta with my grandmother.
Oh my God.
Family, I'm first generation. I know a lot of people don't actually identify themselves that way, but when I was growing up, a lot of people did. And I'm first generation on my mother's side, second on my dad's. And actually, I just found out some interesting stuff about my mom's family in Italy, but my family on both sides are, they still are there, cousins and family in Italy. And so everybody on my mom's side of the family cooked. And I just recently found out that my dad's side of the family has a restaurant in Scala in Italy too. So
Oh, wow.
it seems like it was interesting to find that out, that it is like deeply in my DNA, the love of food and cooking. And it was so funny. My cousin posted pictures from the restaurant and they had made ravioli with ingredients from their garden. I'm like, oh my God, I do that. I do that all the time. So it was so funny to find that out. So my earliest memory is making pasta with my grandmother, like standing at the kitchen table, and she would hand me the pasta dough and I would make like little turtles and shapes, and she was pumping out the pasta. And she would prepare for Sunday dinner on Saturday. And I remember hearing, uncles talk about coming to our house for Sunday dinner, and they'd sit down, and the first thing they would do is, eat the pot roast or whatever that was the first, and not knowing that was the first course. And then would come out the pasta, and then would come out the third course, the salad course. And they were like so stuffed by the end of it because they didn't know how to pace themselves. That was just how we grew up eating. So it's those kind of food memories are in my DNA for sure. And we grew up, poor. My family, my direct family, my mom was a single mom of 5 girls, and we just grew up cooking everything. We couldn't afford to buy packaged food. It was more expensive. Yeah. So we made our own bread, we made our own condiments, we made our own. My mom would buy 1 box of store-bought cookies or something like Yodels for the week for us to go to school with. And usually by the end of the first day, they were gone. So we had to make all of our own snacks. And we just grew up doing that. So it's very second nature to me to just walk in, see what's in the refrigerator and create something. That's my background. And that's my, where my expertise for cooking and preparing food comes from. We grew a lot of it, and which I still do. So that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Very nice.
Okay, so here's another weird synchronicity. So I am the eldest of 5 sisters, as is
Wow.
Like me.
And I'm 100% Croatian. Okay, which is very, like we wear the same color shirt today.
It's sister. I mean, we do this all the time.
We are sisters from many lifetimes. But so I grew up in an immigrant household. Also, most of my grandparents were born, and they were fleeing the Second World War when they came to the United States. So yeah. Very much hardcore Croatian community that I grew up in, very tight. I mean, very old world. We would, make strudel, all the women on the dining room table with a broomstick rolling out the phyllo dough homemade, like that's probably my earliest memory. I was maybe like 3. I remember just rolling the dough and it was normal, and people putting, I remember like old ladies, my great grandmother, like, doing this with the water to keep the dough wet. Anyway, but yeah, food was always at the center of everything. My dad is a winemaker on the central coast of California. So we grew up total foodies, totally thinking this is normal to be very discerning about what we eat. When my great grandfather came to America, he started a restaurant in Northern California called Tony's Seafood. It's still there, north of San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty famous fish restaurant, and all my relatives were seafaring fishermen. So, and then my grandmother came up with all the food recipes. So we came from this big food restaurant family too. And so, it's always been a source of love for me. Like food, we say food equals love all the time on the show. It's like, I remember my grandmother holding me and saying like, it's okay. If I was sad about something, like, let's make bread. We just she would put that into me as like kneading means meditation and comfort and I love you and that kind of thing. And I just like, to this day when I smell the scent of like yeast doing its thing, it makes me think of her. Who lived to be almost 100 years old, and I had her in my life for so long. And so the recipes in here, in the beginning of the book, Debrianna dedicates the cookbook to her glorious husband, David. I had to dedicate mine to every Croatian woman in my life they were a group who gave me, all the inspiration for their recipes and my own takes on them. But mainly my mom is the main dedication for this book for me, because she just was an excellent cook and very high standards. And, we really appreciated food too from growing up with her. And she always was trying to further herself. Like she got Gourmet magazine and we'd, couldn't wait to look through it with her and make something out of it when we were little. And it was just like, that just seemed normal to me. We were the same. We didn't buy a lot of store-bought stuff. We made our things and we were proud of them. And we loved seeing how people reacted to eating food. Like our joy was like, oh, did you like the cake? Did you like this? Did you like that? And massive family food gatherings, just like my Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like that's literally our life. Like when we watch that movie with my grandma, she's like, what's the big deal? We do this every day. Anyway, so yeah, food is definitely, life for us, both, I think, and our families. And, we have deep connection to Croatia still. I was there, I went last summer, lots of relatives, and, my mom probably going to retire there. We go back and forth now that we can. So I just love it there. But yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yep. I love it though. I love hearing these stories because it always, it just, I love hearing about this because so many people, they put out, cookbooks and everything, and they talk about their cooking, but I always love to hear the backstory on where this kind of came from, the kind of personal history. And this is always really beautiful to me, hearing these stories.
Yeah, I think in large part, the advent of packaged food robbed us of so much of that connection that people derive from being together in a kitchen, passing that knowledge of, it's such a deep history and connectivity to not only each other, but to the land, to where your food comes from, to what good food really tastes like and feels like in your consciousness. That the packaging, the pre-packaging of stuff caused a lot of convenience, but I think we were robbed of a lot of that connectivity.
It's also
Absolutely.
the modern world too. I mean, I'll say for my own self, we're on the run as Americans. We're work, especially pre-COVID, in the office, having to travel, having to do whatever. And that comes first before family a lot of times, just for survival in this world and all the expenses that we have. And we want, good things for our children and all this stuff. And I got to the point where I was like, oh, that Whole Foods prepackaged thing is so easy. I'm just going to buy that. You know what I mean? Even though I would have loved to have had taken the time to make a nice dinner and just didn't have the time, you know? And so it's like, what does that say about us too? You know, it got to the point where like Thanksgiving was the only time I really, really cooked and took the time to cook. And that just made me sad. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And then I realized this is a much deeper, longer story, but a short form is, you know, I needed to get a divorce, and I wasn't really looking at that. And, you know, the moment I left that relationship and restarted my life is the moment I started cooking again. And Corona Kitchen really, that we started together, just, you know, jump started that love again, because we had to cook, you know, during COVID. So it was like, oh yeah, I love this. It's not a burden. It's not a chore. This actually makes me feel good. And I think for a lot of Americans, especially, we just get in that mindset of like, oh, I don't have time. It's such a pain in the ass. I have to go to the market. I have to get this and that and that. Well, I don't have time to do that. I have to take the kids to ballet lessons, blah, 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 you know, and you just get caught up in that. And it's just so important. We can carve it out. And I think in a post-COVID world, we realize we can carve it out. We can work remotely from home. We can do other things. It doesn't have to be this constant drive. And that's the most important thing. You know, we're having a shift right now, priorities, I feel like, I mean, do you agree? I mean, it's just like,
yeah, no, I mean, I think that term, Americans are, you know, they have such high productivity. That sounds really positive. But what it means is we're working so hard. We're working much harder than other people in the world in, you know, in other industrialized countries. And it's not a good thing that we're overproductive. What it means is we don't have time for our actual lives that nurture and support us. So I always have to laugh when I hear that term productivity, and it's not healthy for us as a culture. So
Well, no, I mean, because both of you, you know, said that you come from backgrounds where you've had a lot of siblings that you would be cooking with, or relatives you'd be cooking with. How many times did you guys have really amazing or important conversations, you know, while you're cooking? And then now we have these people that they come home, they nuke something, everybody goes and eats in front of their computer, nobody talks. I mean,
yeah,
can you guys talk about the juxtaposition of that? Because you must know people that are kind of living that life, whereas opposed to you had big important conversations and life-changing experiences based around cooking, right?
Yeah, well, that's the whole premise of my show. Everything I learned in life, I learned around a table, eating, cooking.
Yeah.
Every important lesson I learned, it seemed like a meal was involved.
I think I learned how to debate from my family, because our big tables, when we would go to my grandmother's house for regular meals, even, it was just like there would, and this will segue into politics here. It, you know, all of a sudden, like, you know, my grandfather would say something like, throw out a term of the day or what was happening in the news, and everybody would just like, blah, 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 and you were allowed to have your opinion about it. And it was healthy debate back in the day. Today, that's a lot more difficult, but like we decompressed, we said our feelings, people could get mad or whatever, storm off, but it was done at the table. It was almost like group therapy, actually, when I think about it. But it's so true. It's like not doing that cuts off and suppresses so much of the important processing we just have to do to be human, you know, and to connect with others and the people we love. And we're just so cut off from it, you know, and how do we get it back? And we, you know, and I think we made a book like this because it's kind of our answer to how we did get it back. And here's how, if you want to do this kind of stuff, you know.
I always thought that would solve a lot of the world's problems if you would just sit down over a great bottle of wine and a couple of courses of really good food. A lot of problems could really be solved, because that's the commonality. It's so, what's been so interesting too, in that the time we've taken over these years, is Lisa and I are the network, we're the producers, we decide what's happening. And so when we're, you know, deciding what to cook, I mean, it's been years of this.
3.5 years.
You realize the commonalities among cultures. Everybody has some form of flatbread. Everybody has some form of stuffed pasta. Every culture has a commonality of what some people call peasant food, what I call comfort food, that goes across the continents. And so if you can find that commonality, I think everybody can find some level. And, it's not exactly the same, of course not, but it's close enough that I think people could come together if they would just eat together.
Our whole thing is food has to taste good. And how do you do that? The number one thing is you get the best ingredients you possibly can. And I think, we're the great assessors of our refrigerator. Like a lot of the times for the show, we'd be like, okay, I've got this in my fridge. It's almost like an episode of Chopped every night.
Yeah.
I've got this in my fridge. What could I make? Let's not make that because I don't have the key good ingredient for that, or let's morph this and do this. We're constantly, in that mode, which is really fun. It's like doing a challenge.
Creative space to be in. It absolutely is a creative space to be in.
Yes, and creative.
I want to stay on this topic a little bit because when I was reading the book, one of the things that really shone through the cookbook, yes, it's a cookbook, and yes, it has many recipes in it. But what really struck me was from the photography to the titles of the recipes, there was a real warmth and love in this cookbook that I saw. And there was a lot of also writing about your lives and how the food touched your lives. Was that when you I talk to many people who have to talk to publishers about selling a concept for a book. How are you able to articulate this to the publishers? Was it hard, or was it, just looking at your show, was that kind of easy to kind of pick up?
Well, it was the only thing we knew how to do.
I was just going to say that, Debrianna. I was literally going to say those exact words.
It's so funny. I mean, we do that all the time. It's just, all we could do was present who we were. And we had either one of us, I don't think, had any expectation that they were going to take it. So we just, at this point in our lives, both of us insist on being who we are. And if they didn't want to accept that for whatever reason, and it was totally fine, we were just going to do it ourselves anyway. I mean, we had a whole cadre of people that wanted what we were doing. So we presented it properly. We had a proof of concept. We had to give writing samples, which we had, and we had to give recipes, and we'd already been taking photographs because we were posting them every day. Yeah. So we didn't, at that point have the professional ones, but we had our Instagram and Facebook and all that, the photos. We always posted a photo of what we made, and took relatively good photos. And now we have a photo contest in Corona Kitchen. So we've developed over the years. So, we were kind of already focused and clear. We had a clarity about who we were, what we wanted to say, what the food represented. And so it wasn't hard to do that. We weren't trying to please anybody else, which I think is a key ingredient when you're presenting your idea. And Lisa pitches ideas all the time, so you can speak.
It was a lesson for me in pitching, because I've pitched, countless TV show series and all that kind of stuff. And it's always like, you get to this place where, here's who we are. We know it's good. Take it or leave it. And if you want to take us, here's what comes with it. Opinionated feminist women who are totally political, who come from these immigrant families, who love food and storytelling, and we want to do it like a scrapbook memory thing, and it's not a normal cookbook. If that sounds good to you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But we weren't going to alter ourselves. We didn't want to do it if we had to alter ourselves, and they were so great they're like, this is what we love about you. So let's do it because it's different. You're quirky. You're weird. Let's do it. You know,
we had no idea that, I mean, honestly, we had no expectation, and we were literally shocked when they said they would.
Yeah, we were stunned.
Take us on.
Absolutely stunned.
No, I'm glad to hear when publishers do that, because so often I hear other stories that are the opposite, where they want to unmake the good thing and make it bad. So I'm glad they left well enough alone and just let you guys be you.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about them for 1 second. Okay, so they're Apollo Publishers in New York City, and the woman that we were dealing with is one of the co-owners. You know, she's young. You know, she's a millennial. She did most of her early work working for like HarperCollins and the big publishers, and this is her first venture out, I believe, as a publisher with her co-owner Alex. And it's like, you know, they are trying to forge a road for themselves. So they're different, you know, like they learned from all the traditional places, but there was space there for people like us. So I think we have to give them some credit for sure, for like, you know, being a little bit non-traditional, you know, and taking us on for sure. I mean, you know, we're so grateful to them for doing that, but they were not your typical, you know, it wasn't us, you know, approaching Simon Schuster, you know, it wasn't like that. But that doesn't mean that this couldn't, you know, take off in a major way. It's just the publishing landscape is different too. I mean, we're learning, you know, we're learning. We knew nothing about it, but like with Amazon and all the stuff, you know, it's a totally different scene, I'm sure, than you know, pre-internet days.
Well, what's that saying? You know, luck equals preparation, and you know, when it meets opportunity and preparation, and we were completely prepared for that to happen. I mean, we did the work. We didn't realize we had done what one would call a test kitchen, because we'd already cooked all the recipes. So a lot of what we needed to bring to a cookbook, we already had done. We were writing the recipes and publishing them for people to just take on Facebook. A lot of them, the book has ones that we obviously didn't do. And so there are new recipes in there as well, but we had already done a lot of the work that somebody has to do to put a cookbook together, and we didn't even know it.
See, that speaks to the serendipity again. We're like falling into this. I mean, we called upon my cousin, who's a professional food stylist, and she's just like, okay, you realize when you get a cookbook deal, you have to take like a year to do all this stuff that you already did. You were already doing it. You didn't know. And that's why your book's ready to go, you know, but we didn't know the writing of it would take a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that a lot.
It takes a long time, but we just, I mean, I swear to God, we just fell into this, you know, we're just going with it.
I got to ask, how did you guys meet?
This is so funny.
Very funny story. Again, total serendipity. So
yeah, I'm very active on social media. I have been for years. Well, when I started my web series, I knew it was important to be involved in social media. It was something I was kind of not really into doing, but I did anyway. And so I had been developing my following on Twitter and Facebook for years. And I had met a guy on Facebook who was in the business, and we chatted all the time, you know, back and forth on Twitter. And he contacted me one day and he said, you know, he sold advertising, like big chunks of advertising to network television. And he said, I have a invitation to go to a party at Reels Network in Albuquerque. Do you want to be my +1? And then we can actually meet. And I was like, sure. So I drove up and met him, and it was at this resort place, really nice place in Albuquerque. And we did a tour, and then we were going to sit down and eat together. And my place at the table was right next to Lisa.
I didn't want to go to this dinner. I was head of programming for Reels Channel, all of Reels Channel. I produced 600 hours of television a year for these people. and they're like, come on, you have to speak to the affiliates and the advertisers at this dinner. And I'm like, I'm so busy. I really don't want to do that. Like, okay. The CEO called me. It's like, you have to be there. I'm like, okay. So I sit down and they put me next to Debrianna, and I'm just like, the whole dinner we spent critiquing the horrible food.
Oh no.
And we became instant friends.
We bonded over that.
Instant friends. It was so fun.
That's how we met.
And then we realized, because I also have an acting background too, but I hadn't done it in years. That's a whole other story, coming back to that. But she was working on Breaking Bad. We were working next door to where they shot Breaking Bad at the now Netflix studios in Albuquerque. And so I was interviewing, Giancarlo Esposito and Bryan Cranston and all these people for that show was being produced at the same time. And I'm like, okay, and we had all these things. And then we realized, oh yeah, you're really an activist. Me too. I have really strong feelings about women's issues and different things. And we were just like this. I mean, and then we started seeing each other at marches, protest all the time, so it was just definitely kindred spirit.
I know that the cookbook touches on the idea of sustainable cooking and cooking with what you have, like say in the garden or what you're getting at the farmers markets. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Go ahead.
Let's see. Well, me being a farmer's daughter, because my dad, grew wine grapes, and my other side of the family, even though had that a restaurant, we always had a garden, always so into going directly to the farmer for food. I've always attended farmers markets and grown my own food. So the excitement of not only having a great, bunch of produce or, vegetables, fruit, whatever it is that's local and seasonal, the concept of that, the concept of organics, supporting that, the concept of healthy, things that are grown healthily and not doing the commercial route when you can, is really important to us. I mean, it's the best flavors of food, trying things with heirloom vegetables and getting all into that, growing our own and seeing, what to make of it. I think that's just the tastiest food comes from that, from the ground, and reconnecting with that. Again, we're so separated from how our food is grown and created right now.
We obtain it. Like, this was me as a young person in New York. When I was in the city, I would walk around the streets and I think, if I ever get wealthy, I want to buy a place in New York and in what we call here the hell strip, the part that's between the road and the sidewalk, where there's usually trees or something planted, if not filled in with concrete. I was like, I'm going to plant fruit trees in the hell strip and feed people, so people could just walk by and pick fruit and feed themselves. Like, the concept of you being able to put a seed in the ground. Like, one of the things we've taught people over the years that we've been doing Corona Kitchen is, like, when you eat a tomato and you open it up and you see the seeds in there, that's where the tomato comes from. Those are the seeds. I can show you how to take the seed out of a pepper, dry it, and then in the summer, you put it in the ground and you have your own food. Or take the end of a scallion when you buy it from the store and it has the little roots on the end that people cut off and throw away. Take that and put it in the ground and you will grow your own scallions. A
lot of that kind of stuff.
It's magical to me.
It's magic. It's total magic. And Debrianna has this infamous freezer, that none of us have. And, she saves all of her Parmesan rinds and her things for her soup stock and all this stuff and composting. And I think we're getting really into that with the members of our food community, just because again,
it's the cycle of life.
We were able to take pause during this pandemic time. And I think we took pause in such a way to really realize where our food came from. and get into it because it's fun. And it's not only that, but you're supporting farmers. You get to see the farmer who grew your food when you go to the farmer's market. There's again, human connection there. It's not just like going to the market and buying frozen chicken wings, you know what I mean? And not seeing the animal, you know, or thinking about how those animals are raised. And we question and think about, like, what are we doing here with this factory farming and mass, you know, farming and all the chemicals that are used and all that stuff. And it's like, we don't have to do it that way. You know what I mean? We do not have to do it that way, even on a mass level. But for you yourself, you can take responsibility for yourself. And all we have in America is our dollar. You know, it's like, if I choose to buy organic, I'm making a political choice, actually, and a way, and showing how I want my food to be grown and eaten. And I put that into my body. And, you know, I want food that's grown with love. I mean, when somebody gives you a basket of tomatoes from their garden, can you not feel that love go into you? I mean, it's visceral. I feel it, you know?
Oh, by the way, I do have a cherry tree and an apricot tree in my health strip now.
Very nice.
And it's so funny. My neighbor came up to me and she was walking by with her kids. She said, "Oh, I hope you don't mind. My kids have been picking your cherries." I'm like, "No, please pick your cherries." That's why I put it there.
It's totally just, you know, that again, human bonding of good. You're connected to the land. You're connected to the way your food is grown. We've lost that. We've completely lost that. And we've got to.
And then we lose our connectivity to each other because of that. It's so wrapped up together that if we can bring even a little of that back, we'll bring the humanity back to ourselves. Like gardening is such an interesting thing. It's not always that you put a seed in the ground and it grows. Some of them don't. Sometimes, you know, the weather is not conducive. Sometimes you have to put more calcium in the soil to make the tomatoes not have end rot. And so it's always a thinking and giving and taking that happens when you're gardening. And there's joy in the end product. Like I must look like a lunatic when I go through my garden and pull potatoes out of the ground. I'm like, look. It's so exciting and magical to me that if we can bring that back, like I always had this idea about those big box stores that are closing. If we could go in there and teach people how to do hydroponics, you could grow food in there. Like, why should we just be handing people out cans of food? Why can't we teach them how to grow at least herbs in a pot? Like anybody could do that anywhere you live. And
that's a big concept that we have at the beginning of the book that we take from the movie Ratatouille, which is the basic premise is anyone can cook. And it's so true because a lot of our community, you know, people are afraid. They're afraid, like, I'm going to screw up, whatever. You know, I screw up all the time on the show. Debrianna makes mistakes. You know, I think that's the other part too that translates a lot with people. Is like, you know what, sometimes it's not going to work out. And then it's like, well, why didn't it work out? Oh, because I used salt instead of sugar or whatever. I couldn't see the thing, you know, or whatever the case may be. But to take the chance, it's worth it. Try it out. That's really what we're saying. And if you try it, you're going to want to do more because you're going to like it because it's going to make you feel good. You know, my grandmother used to always say, my garden is my therapy, and, you know, and like, we'd be like, where's Nana? She's just out tending the garden for a couple hours. It's, you know, before dinner, and wanted to be by herself. And then she'd come back in and be like, okay, let's have dinner, you know? And it was just like, I learned that, you know, and I think if everybody did that, wow, we probably wouldn't have as many wars, you know?
I want to talk about your activism and how you've used that for documentary work. Debrianna, I'm a big fan of a documentary that you and your husband made called Earthships of Taos. And that's a film that's kind of a touchstone for me with a friend that passed because he was very
he was very big on the film and the documentary, and he wanted to show it to everybody that he could because he thought it was very important. Can you talk about this documentary a little bit and what it meant to you and your husband to make it?
Oh yeah. It's so funny. There's so much that goes in my mind when you bring that up. First of all, I'm just so touched that people were moved by it. I had no idea. We put it out there and we didn't know, what happened or where it went or who even watched it. But I'm very surprised and touched that you know about that film. A very dear friend of ours actually just passed who has had an Earthship. He built one, and it's all kind of the flow of the same conversation about how we are so connected to the ground and to ourselves and to each other in that way. And the Earthship is a perfect identifier for that, where you use the earth, the qualities of the ground that give back and take, that it's a cycle. So if you build part of your home into the ground, you automatically have a cooling feature that happens. The Earthships of Taos are in such a cool place. Like, they took a piece of land that was what was deemed unusable because it was a waste from a gravel pit, and it was cheap because nobody wanted it. They deemed it unusable, and they were able to take that land, build the homes, burn them into the earth, set up water collection areas, have solar panels, that they're self-sufficient in that community. And so then they can grow their food because they're collecting their water, and the homes are gorgeous. And I think that was the other thing, that people would think, oh, it's just like a hippie tent or something. And people have made incredible homes that are built around the functionality of the piece of property and the respect for the land and the place that they live. It all wraps together. And we were so impressed by what people had done there, and just wanted to share that with other people, that there are other ways to do what we do in the world and still have beauty and convenience. It's just another way. That's all. It doesn't have to be one way down the fossil fuel, everything cookie cutter, instant lifestyle. There are other ways to do it and still have a gratifying and fulfilling life.
I really loved the documentary. I thought as California's climate changes, it's something that a lot of us are going to have to be looking at. And it's something that my wife and I are looking at, that model of the Earthship, and thinking maybe this is something that we could do. And I think a lot of people are starting to look at that too.
Yeah.
And they are very beautiful. I will
they're very beautiful.
echo that.
Yeah. They're very beautiful. And it's a creative, place to figure out how to use the place that you are planting your stake. And it does take work, but there's a lot of there's ways where you can combine convenience with using the land or the piece of land that you are on. So I just love the whole concept of that.
Lisa, I want to talk to you about a documentary that you were associate producer on called However Wide the Sky, Places of Power. Can you talk a little bit about this documentary?
Sure. Well, I was just going to add to the end of your Earthship thoughts that, New Mexico is a really special place. We feel so lucky to live in this state. It's a confluence of many different cultures here that are celebrated and honored, and we code this so much history, Native American history, all that stuff, and the Earthships are in this really beautiful part of our state, and there's so much information out there of how to do different kinds of homes, straw bale homes, all the off the grid stuff. It's a total thing here. But anyway, back to however why this guy. So I've been working for almost 10 years now with an incredible nonprofit called Silver Bullet Productions. I work in the film arm of them, but their main focus is education, film education on Native lands and with different Native, tribes here in New Mexico, the Pueblo tribes mainly. And we did this because, we go in and do these workshops, these creative educational workshops with Native youth to teach them how to use cameras, document their story, because the stories are getting lost in the, confluence of modernity and, the old ways and in a lot of different places in these different tribes. So it's been a hugely successful thing of just, all these kids going off to be filmmakers and preserving their culture and all this different stuff, all this good things. But the documentary features that we do with the organization are really to shed light on like myth busting historical things about Native Americans here in the United States. And it's been such a joy for me to be a part of this group. I am but one tiny cog in a big wheel that makes these films. And I feel just honored to be even a part of it. This last one that we did, However Wide the Sky, it's currently on PBS. And we did win an Emmy for it. I can't even begin to explain, just the happiness I feel to myth bust any misconceptions about Native history. I learn every time. It's not my culture, but I learn from it and I listen, and I think that's what everybody's trying to do right now in their respective origins. Just listen to the truth. Just listen to what it is from the people that it's happened to, and not having an interpretation from someone else who doesn't have a connection to it. And so, we really work stridently to have, major Native involvement on all of our projects, from advisors of tribes to governors of tribes. Our films get viewed over and over to make sure we're saying things properly and doing all the right things. And in this particular project, my third film with these people, we wanted to take 5 or 6 different stories of some environmental kind of disaster issues in the United States and just tell each one of the stories. Like, for example, we talk about Chaco Canyon and Blue Lake in Taos and different places all around the Southwest, mainly in New Mexico, but a couple on the Colorado border, etc. And I think the stories are just shocking, enlightening, factually correct, and people were cheering at the end of this film because some of the environmental things that were reversed were, overturned by the Biden administration. So it's just like when you look at what the plight of the tribes here in America has been since the, colonial founding of this place, it's just brutal. It's brutal, but there are victories, and this film deals with kind of the small victories, I think, and some of the bigger victories. So it was a hopeful film as opposed to total downer. You know what I mean? But it sets up all the different stories of these different places of power, because you go to a place in an average American and thinks, oh, that's a national park, it's cool, it's owned by the government, I get to go there and camp. Well, to a whole other massive group of people for many, many centuries, that is a sacred space. That is a sacred church, if you will, of their tribe or whatever, that's been decimated by, people trying to take the oil out of it or the uranium or whatever. And we didn't learn these things in school. So we're on this quest with this group to be truth sayers and let everybody know what's really going on. And so it's been enormously gratifying for me to be a part of it. And, we have this particular film is in the Museum of the American Indian in New York. It's in the Smithsonian. Universities license it all the time. Different tribes, show it frequently to their people. I mean, it's just been like such a great thing. I mean, we could make movies like this forever, and there's a million topics, because there's so many things to talk about. But it's been a joy for me to be part of this stuff. And I'm making a new one now with them. And we're going even deeper. It's just some, controversial, tough topic stuff, but it's the wave right now. There's a wave of truth happening, and a fight, of what to teach kids and what not to teach kids, and
what our real history is.
Yes.
Right. Because we never got it. We did not get the real history at all growing up. And if I can be but one small part of that in my lifetime, it gives me a lot of joy, because it must be told, across all.
It's so interesting because New Mexico has so much of that. I did a PBS documentary film called Awakening in Taos, which is really about the Mabel Dodge Lujan part of our history that gets so ignored in the how much women played a part in art history. It's shocking how many women get ignored in the art world, and how they've not been paid attention to. And I mean, I did the voice of Georgia O'Keeffe in that, but in Georgia is one of the ones, she's so New Mexican here, but an international star that everybody knows. But there were so many more that never get talked about. And so there's a rich history and culture of things in that we don't know about. And we're so blessed to be able to tell those stories.
For example, the new Oppenheimer movie. Christopher Nolan left out a lot of that story of the downwinders here in New Mexico who were asked to leave when they did the testing, and everybody here just freaking out about it. I mean, we're this blue state surrounded by red, sandwiched between red. And we're pretty active here. We only have 2 million people in the 5th largest state in landmass, and we are vocal for sure, about human rights.
I never learned about the Japanese internment camps until I came to New Mexico, and they were here in Santa Fe. I mean, why didn't I learn about that in school? Well,
there's so much. God, we don't. Did you know there's Angel Island off of San Francisco was a internment camp for Italians during World War II. Did you know that?
No, but I am well aware of how Italians were treated when they came here. And I often have to remind some of my relatives that we were those people on the bottom rung. We are immigrants. Don't diss immigrants. You are one.
I talk about it there's a story in the book where I talk about my great grandfather. He was an illegal immigrant. He had to flee persecution, and it was going down, and so it took him 12 years to get enough money to bring everybody over to escape the war. And he was living here illegally, selling tacos, doing whatever he had to do, fishing, whatever he had to do to get his family over here. And I don't think people understand that.
They forget.
People that are going through
their history
are exactly the same. It's not a party, to have to do that and uproot your whole family. You do it because you have to. You should not discriminate just because they happen to have brown skin now.
Nobody wants to pick up and leave their family, leave their land, leave their friends, leave their community. They won't do it unless they have to, because people, when we were doing it, there was a world war, and everyone was aware of that. Not everyone is aware today of global history and what is happening in other countries. People don't do that. They don't leave with what they can grab on their back unless they have to.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, circling back to human connection. We're all human, we should be all caring about every child that loses their mom at the border or whatever the case may be. This is us. We are them, they are us, and it's hard times these days. There's a lot going on politically that we're actively involved in. We talk about it every Monday night on our show. We're hugely involved in women's issues and the plight of women here in this country, especially, which is at an all-time low. And so it's the fight never ends. I mean, that's part of it too. I've always found it interesting. We have this huge group, that we assembled, many people that we don't know, but many people that we do know that are conservative that watch our show. And yet we're able somehow to still have healthy dialogue because they don't leave. We know they're not leaving as members of the group, but we talk about stuff that we know they don't believe in or whatever, you know what I mean? But maybe it's through food, maybe it's through the way we present the facts, I don't know, or our passion or our individual experience, but somehow we've gathered this group of a lot of like-minded people for the important things, I think, and through food, and that means something to us. We've done something here. I don't think it really dawns on us what we've done until we do things like this interview.
We have to talk about it.
But it's, we just feel so good about it. Like we did something, we brought people together in hard times and continuing on through the hard times that we're still having. It's not over, it's going to be a constant fight, but we have each other. I guess that's the main point I'm trying to say. We have each other,
I want to ask you one last question. What's next for both of you?
We talk about doing a line of product.
Ooh.
We have ideas about what we'd like to do. We talk about perhaps a show of pitching a show about me finding my family roots in Italy. I've never been there, but I know my whole family's there. I know. And both sides are there, and I've never met them or seen them. And I was told stories when I was young about we had money, but it was all taken during the war, and my sisters and I all blew it off. I'm like, oh yeah, everybody has stories. And then I don't know what made me. I guess I was doing something, researching something for my show, and I found out that my mom's last name is Chiaia, which is a very unusual. I've never heard anybody have that name all the time I've grown up. I've never heard another Italian person have that name. And it turns out there's a whole town with a luxury hotel chain and a whole boulevard with that family name in a place in Italy. And I'm like, what?
It looks like the White Lotus season 2, by the way.
I was absolutely stunned. And so, we're thinking like, wow, that could be a show.
That sounds like a great show.
I mean, we're always thinking about TV shows. I mean, I'm making this first feature for me. I'm very excited about it. I hope we get to do more books. I hope we get to do, more things together, Debrianna and I. And as far as TV show, I mean, look, nobody can replace Anthony Bourdain. Okay, he was one of a kind, and they've been trying to since he passed away. But I feel like we have something quirky and different that's a women's angle of it that no one's ever seen, of like doing a similar thing. Everybody tries to say, oh, I want to be da 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 like Anthony Bourdain. No, you're not going to be him. Okay, but we could do our own brand of discovery but ours is like family based, and if we could do something with Debrianna's discovering roots, I mean, I've already discovered my roots, so I could help her along the way. And I think that would be a really fun thing because, people should do that. If you've never done it, with Ancestry and 23andMe and all that stuff, hey, you could be sponsors.
That would be great. I would watch that. That sounds great.
Right? And really go to the place and really live that and be inspired to do that yourself. I mean, it changed my life as a child, going to Croatia with my grandparents, climbing the 12th century bell tower with my grandfather and having him say, look at this land, this is your blood. Promise me that you're going to connect your kids and grandkids to this, or else we have nothing. This is all we are, you know. And I finally fulfilled that promise last summer when I took my kids there, when we could finally travel. And it just changes you to connect to that, your family, your blood. It changes you in the best way, and connects us even further. And we need that. And whatever network executive is listening to this interview, don't you think it's a great idea?
Please make this TV show. This needs to happen. My wife and I would watch this. This sounds great.
Right? I would. No, totally. So yeah, we're thinking about stuff like that. And I mean, you know, we're growing. Everybody always asks us, well, what's your pivot? Because we're of a certain age. It's like, well, we're not dead yet. That was what we said after the Emmy last October.
And Apollo's asked us for another book. So,
and it's just like, you know what? You can work and do what you want to do and live your passion till the day you die if you want. I firmly believe that. And we intend to do that in a lot of different ways.
Well, Lisa and Debrianna, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I've really loved getting a chance to talk to the both of you. Thank you for this wonderful cookbook as well. Also, just want to mention to the listening audience, it is going to be out this week. So you can get it through all major online retail outlets and at all better bookstores. Lisa and Debrianna, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That was my conversation with the wonderful Debrianna, Mansini, and Lisa Lucas. Their book, That Time We Had Our Feelings, is out now. And again, I'm going to say it's a wonderful book. I really recommend you get it. I really do think also it would make a really good Christmas present or Hanukkah present for somebody. Check that out. It's going to be available today. You can get it through the links in the bio at all better bookstores. I'm also airing a program today as well with the wonderful Alicia Chevatoni, who is a food author and chef out of Las Vegas. Check that out as well today also. I hope you're having a really good near holiday season and a really wonderful fall. And until next time, I'll see you at the library.